Glaucon and Socrates are discussing in the Republic the difference between knowledge and opinions. And Socrates starts by saying knowledge is what is, and ignorance is what is not. This is a fair definition. But what does that make opinion? And Socrates goes, well, opinion is kind of neither. Opinion, it clearly relates to something, because you can't have an opinion and not be grasping nothing. That's the language he directly uses. And I guess an example of an opinion, if let's say I have an opinion, or you have an opinion that The Lion King is the best Disney film. That's not knowledge, because that's not what it is. It's not objectively what it is, but it's not ignorance either. So what exactly is this? And if an opinion is neither knowledge nor ignorance, Socrates concludes that opinion is the intermediate tree between them. So imagine like ignorance at the bottom, opinion in the middle, knowledge at the top. And Glaucon says, well, if you're not thinking for yourself, perhaps opinions are bad things. And this intermediate tree that people create, it's not necessarily good, because you're not reaching knowledge, right? The wise don't have opinions, the wise just know. And it's a fair criticism from Glaucon. But then Socrates kind of links it he takes an interesting direction with it. And he links opinions to art. And he says, art, to create an art piece is to share an opinion, is to create something subjective that's like a message. And if you look at all these sort of physical things that we call beautiful, you can also subjectively think they're not beautiful. And how then beauty can hover between what is and what is not. So I take that, and then I take two leaps. One leap is that I say, I look at just how opinions are the intermediary between knowledge and ignorance. I think the right hemisphere is the intermediary between two left hemisphere things, one left hemisphere objective and one left hemisphere one left hemisphere objective truth and a left hemisphere objective untruth. That's one leap. And then the second leap is this thought about how do we apply this idea to our life. Actually, I feel like I should maybe explain that a bit more. No, okay, I'll go back onto this. I think the best way that I can put this is how, when we look at skills, let's, like, at the start, when you have no skills, you're building something from scratch, and you say, how do you make your life more interesting? I think the right answer is, I don't have any skills. So let's put the other stuff to the side for now. And let's say you decide on the skill of start playing the piano. And when you start, you're ignorant. But maybe you get over that ignorant hurdle, and you get good and you get better. You're still not quite at this knowledge level at the top. You're kind of in the middle. And the knowledge at the top would be something like where Plato goes into the theory of forms and says there's this perfect version of everything. And it would be something, the closest thing that we have to knowledge at the top would be like a Beethoven piece. So you've got the ignorant 2-year-old at the bottom, you've got the Beethoven piece at the top, and you're just like trying to gradually increase yourself in this weird kind of middle like section, with weird purgatory. And then I guess you get to the point, you can't really achieve this perfection, this this gold mine at the top of Plato's theory of forms. So the only thing that you can do is you can overlap it with something else. So you combine, essentially you say to yourself, I'm a good piano player. What else can I be good at? And you say, okay, I've got a good relationship now. And you get good at being in relationships, and you get good at being a boyfriend. And now you overlap the two. You overlap your skill as a musician and your skill as a boyfriend, and now once a month you perform in front of your girlfriend and her family, and you make your life more interesting. And that's because you get to a state, I think, of mastery of that one thing, and then you think, okay, these gains, I'm never going to achieve perfection, but these gains are getting more incrementally small. And then I think the right thing to do is to overlap it with something. And what I then lead to now is this diagram that I've been speaking about for the last couple of weeks. It's called the Absurdism diagram, and I used it in the marketing discussion about Dove and cookies that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. And essentially, every good marketing campaign does this to a degree. And I feel like actually I need to pause, because I feel like I don't want to be too... I want to make sure you're following everything.
Okay, so shall I try and repeat back to you what I think you said, and you can tell me how right it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so you started talking about knowledge versus opinion, and this kind of scale that exists where on one end is ignorance, which is what something isn't, and on the other end is knowledge, which is what something is, and opinion kind of sits in the middle, because to somebody, you know, The Lion King is the best Disney film, to other people it's not, and which is knowledge and which is ignorance? Well, you can't really say, because opinion, so it sits somewhere in the middle. And beauty is something that can be and cannot be beautiful, a painting or a drawing or an outfit or whatever, and that's why it's an opinion whether something is beautiful. That's why you say the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And then you said that anything that we do kind of sits on this scale between ignorance and knowledge. But I kind of, on my work here, I replaced knowledge with the ideal, and kept ignorance on one end. So like, in my context of basketball, before I played, I was completely ignorant to how to do anything on the basketball court. And I'm shooting towards an ideal, which would be being the perfect, complete player. But I'm somewhere in the middle. And that ideal is something I'll never reach. Just in the same way that, I don't know, a painting can never be completely beautiful, because there's some subjectivity to it. And you then said to make your life interesting, you can't just stick with one thing, because you'll never reach that ideal in that one thing, because in the nature of being an ideal, it's impossible. So I'm never going to be the complete basketball player. And if I pursue that, I'm pursuing a horizon that always stays just ahead of me. And so your response to that, to keep life interesting and keep it engaging and meaningful, is to combine that with something else, maybe something completely different. So in my own context, I'm a basketball player, but I'm also extremely interested in philosophy and psychology and theology. And that comes together and gives my life a bit of balance and something else. I'm never going to be the best speaker. I'm never going to be the most well-read guy. I'm never going to be the best writer on psychology and philosophy and theology. But I'm decent at both, and that makes my life meaningful. And then I can add being a boyfriend into that, or being a friend, or being a son, or being a brother. And this Venn diagram of all these different dimensions of my life come together, and that middle point is me. And that's where I find my life is meaningful and interesting. That's what I've got. So,
yeah, you're pretty on point so far. Okay. Yeah. I guess I emphasize now that you can't keep adding lots and lots of different.
Yeah, you need an element of maximum, I guess. Like 2 or 3 maximum, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things of sort of excellence and pursuits. You can only have a certain amount. But okay, what I'm going with this sort of these adding things to your life and combining things. Once you're good at something, it's stable, you've got a good relationship, then combine that with the fact that you're a piano player and that's a part of your identity. And so you get this Venn diagram. Okay. So this Venn diagram, this idea for this came from, it was inspired by a guy who used it in a marketing context. And he basically explained why we're so drawn to certain marketing campaigns. And he used the example, he used a couple examples. The most common ones I think people will know is that if you think about, there's a campaign that I love, and it's by McDonald's, who they go into New York and they look at this like zebra crossing, this like one of the most famous crossroads in New York, and they paint their fries over each line of the zebra crossing. So it looks like their fries are like painted on the road, and people are walking across that looking like they're walking across their fries. Another example would be taking two things like the idea of Santa and the idea of Coca-Cola. And they're two extremely different things that but they're two different sort of ideas that are well developed and they're well liked. But when you combine them both, then you get a very interesting marketing campaign that crafts sort of the spark of excitement from children, and it does wonders. And I think the reason why this works and why I connected it to opinions is because when you're doing these marketing campaigns, you're satisfying your audience, but you're not necessarily satisfying everyone. You're only targeting, like, you're crafting an opinion, basically, when you do this. And because when you pick things from your life, you're not trying to make the thing that's right for everyone. You're not trying to, like, you being a basketball player that's sort of an opinionated thing that you enjoy, but not everyone can enjoy. It's something that you've picked for your life, and then your relationship, you then pick that for your life, and you've overlapped those things. So I think that's why I linked it to this sort of opinion thought, which I think is important, because these things aren't sort of certainties. So I think I'll finalize this by saying the question of, I think there's something in this, and how do you make your life more interesting? And I think that we need to get more of our own attention, essentially. Just like in a marketing campaign tries to get your attention, I think that we need to put more attention on ourselves. And the way you do that is, a good example would be, if I was to write the word purple with an orange highlighter, it would look weird. You'd be like, okay, normally the word purple's in the purple highlighter. It's not in, and why is purple being written by orange? And if you use it right, then it can become quite interesting. That's why also it can be sort of absurd. It's weird, and I feel like you can just do this with your life. You can do something that you put two stimuli together. So you put orange and you put purple. You put two stimuli together, and then from that you go, this is an interest. I have quite a unique life. I've got this interesting bit of individuality that I'm paying more attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd lastly just sort of I'd lastly just say how I've applied this with my life. And essentially, I sort of 5 years ago, I had like no skills in everything. So then I had to basically learn from the ground up. And I think the first thing that I got good at was like, I was like in bottoms of English. And then I got like pretty good at like spelling and like words. And I kind of just filled in for the lack that I did in earlier years. I basically made myself like a lot better at English. And then so that's one sort of just this small little thing. And then I then start a brand, and then I then start a podcast, and all these things kind of overlap. And now I'm sort of going to go traveling sort of in the second half of next year. And all these things are basically I've done because it's a skill that creates a stimuli that makes my life interesting. And what it does is it grows this base of a pyramid, and obviously the bigger the base, the more that it can go up. And that's why, I mean, just from sort of personal experience, I think it's great to learn skills, and I think it's great to do this sort of overlapping. So yeah, that's kind of it.
I wanna put this all together with something that I've been thinking about quite a lot. Or maybe not. I've not been thinking about it too intensely, but it's been popping up in my mind here and there over the last few months. And I think the reason this absurdity idea works is because we find like paradoxes really engaging and interesting. Two contrasting ideas that come together and seem to exist simultaneously, and somehow it works. And we love that. And that's why it works in marketing campaigns, as you said, because it catches people's attention. Paradoxes catch people's attention. Because they shouldn't work, or they just look weird and then they work, and it's like it's novel. I guess it's engaging because it's novel. It's something we haven't seen before. And the thing that I've been thinking about frequently across the last few months is people we find most interesting, and maybe the people that we see to have the most interesting lives are paradoxes. As in they can exist in two worlds simultaneously, and they seem to get a lot from that, and we're interested in those people. And this is, this could be somebody who's, I don't know, you're a film star, but you're also really, you've got great knowledge in neuroscience, or you're a basketball player, but you're also, a Michelin star chef, or, I'm just plucking ideas out of obscurity right now. But, I guess in the context of my life, I have the sport thing and I have the podcast thing or the psychology thing. And that Venn diagram comes together and that's me. And you have the business student and the philosophy guy, like it's really interested in philosophy, and that comes together to make you. Or you look at, I don't know, characters like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Not that I like him that much, but I see why he's interesting, because he's absolutely jacked out of his mind. But he's also a really good family man. Now, that's what he seems like. He's online. I don't know what the hell he's like with his kids in real life, but he films videos of him making pancakes with his daughters or whatever. But he's also, a film star, and he was a WWE actor. Or, there's many, many examples that you could just pluck out of anywhere. Like they're a long distance runner, but they're also a vegan activist, or you become interesting by combining two ideas and becoming a paradox. And, getting really good at one thing is cool, but getting really good at two things that seem like they're in opposition, and then you bring them together and create something new. That's when you become a paradox.